But in 1973, I was 5 years old. There was a series of UFO sightings in a small town called Piedmont, Missouri, just south of St. Louis, Missouri, where I was born and raised. We're piling in the Chevy with binoculars and thermoses of coffee to go down on weekends during the spring and summer of 73 to look for UFOs. And her first conscious recollection was, as she opened her eyes, why is it daylight outside? She could see homes, she could see the street, she could see the street line illuminated like it was daylight. There's something above the car, there's something above the car. There was no noise, there was no wind displacement, it wasn't a helicopter with a spotlight over their vehicle, dead silent, and within a matter of just seconds after she woke up and realized what was going on, the light went out. My sister never drank, never did drugs. I love her to death, but she's one of the most unimaginative people you could meet. She's not one to come up with a story like this. And then 1 year after that, in 1978, there was a series of UFO sightings and cattle mutilations in a town called Ellsbury, Missouri.
If you had just witnessed a huge fight or an awful car crash or some kind of incredible scene, you'd be talking about it. It happened, bang.
And it's interesting. I didn't appreciate it when I first heard about this at the time, but once I got involved in UFO investigation, I can't tell you, Andy, how many people I've interviewed, much like yourself and your family, where they describe the exact same thing.
And even now, I've said, David, if I ask my mum about it, and I have recently again, she can't remember exactly what she saw. She knows we saw something strange. If I asked her to write it or draw it down, she couldn't. She just remembers it was something weird.
It's a genuine UFO. I mean, they're not saying alien spacecraft. They're not saying they were abducted. If a stranger tells you a story, but it's another thing if it's a family member who you know, who you trust, who you know is not psychologically imbalanced or prone to make up stories. I will tell you, though, it's equally frustrating because I would love to say I've had a personal experience. I've interviewed, as you know, hundreds of people that have had triangular UFO experiences as well as others. And I always state that I'm envious. I'm like, wait a minute, I wrote something about military and intelligence community reviewing this book, and then here we are. They're actually using it. I consider these triangles to be unambiguous UFO reports. It's not that I saw a point of light in the sky a mile away. As you know, Andy, and your listeners, your viewers know, these things are oftentimes extremely close, extremely low. I think that there's logic behind what Chris, postulated, that the fact that these things are low, the fact that these things are slow, would lend to the fact that, in fact, they could be related to some type of survey or reconnaissance or intelligence gathering. And I had just simply suggested that, some of these things apparently have some type of cloaking where when you're looking at it from underneath, it's projecting the star field above, below, arguably. Because if they're someone else's technology and they're aware of geospatial intelligence and satellite imagery, arguably you could reverse that. I think that's a signature or an imprint in the atmosphere that cannot be cloaked.
And it's funny that Dylan Borland, who was speaking at the hearing, he talked about that electricity in the air, like a tingling. He mentioned the smell of a storm that seemed to be there. The archives are like stepping back in time, especially when so much of today's discussion is centred on 2025, the political landscape, what's going on right here and now.
These are not just case files. This is not just history. It's not like going to a World War II museum and you see a mortar shell from World War II or a rifle. This is not just obscure history. These are data points when we're looking at what could potentially be a fundamental reality of the UFO phenomenon as it exists today. He goes, original log sheets from Vandenberg Air Force Base. And I stopped and I said, what year? And he said, 1967. And I turned around and I looked at him, I said, what month? He goes, October. And I looked at him with a real serious look. I said, what date? And he kind of did one of these. He goes, October 6th. I just digitized radio transmissions between radar operators at Vandenberg Air Force Base from October 6th, 1967. We had the audio of the radar operators communicating with each other who were tracking multiple UFOs at the time. And the official explanation was birds that were being tracked on radar. And Hynek writes here, birds, ? And he has it underlined a few times. More importantly, and this is something that literally had been locked away for 35 years, we have an original sketch, detailed sketch of the landing site in burned area, J. Allen Hynek in the 80s went to this location where witnesses described in Golden, New Mexico, which is on the east side of the Sandia Mountains, an area where an object apparently similar to Socorro landed, burned and fused the sand into glass, and then took off. And purportedly, investigators from Sandia National Laboratories and the Air Force came out and dug up all the fused glass and sand and took it away. And with AI being where it is today, I truly feel like we're at an inflection point where technology and historical preservation are coming together. And we're, for the first time, going to find true trends, patterns, correlations in the data. I'm not arrogant enough to say we're going to solve the UFO mystery. I would never go there. But I would argue, because we have so many data points and because the AI technology is so advanced at this point in the stage of the game, I really feel we are going to find true themes, patterns, trends, correlations that can arguably serve as stepping stones towards eventual answers. We've identified 2,500 witnesses over an 80-year period of time from various countries that are describing a similar object that had similar geographic characteristics and had similar atmospheric conditions that were demonstrating very detailed activity and maneuvering. But in absence of physical evidence, that is the best argument we can have in a court of law or a court of public opinion to bring more scientists, bring more academics into looking at this subject. What I did not expect to find is, going through the case files, I found an original radar track report from Kirtland Air Force Base here in Albuquerque, where we're at, from 1959, September 13th, 1959. Original report, along with the letter with the name, rank, serial number of the person that provided it. The object executed 6 to 7 angular turns, and the handwritten documents that came with the report stated the object was moving between, I believe, 1,950 miles per hour and 2,200 miles per hour. This object was moving between 1,950 and 2,200 miles per hour in September of 1959. And as a matter of historical record, your audience and you can go and look this up. We set a new airspeed record in December of 1959 with, I believe it was an F-106 Convair aircraft. Straight line course, 11-mile course. It achieved a new airspeed record of 1,525 miles per hour. 3 months after this UFO incident, where this object was moving 400 to 900 miles in excess of that airspeed record that would be set, and executing maneuvers at those high velocities, not tracked on 1, 2, or 3 radars, but 4 radar stations. Andy, I've said this for years. If it was just people saying they saw things in the sky, I don't think I'd be here right now. I don't think I would have devoted almost 36 years of my life to the UFO subject. We are trained in a matter of a second or two to identify the profile of an enemy aircraft, to identify the insignia, to identify the profile of any given aircraft, whether it's ours or for an adversary's. And we have to do that and assess that in a matter of a second or two, because that second or two could be your life in a real world situation. There were no wings, there were no stabilizers, yet this object could make acute high angular moves with no visible form of support based on aerodynamic principles. So she said, based on those things, it defied aerodynamic physics as we know it. We have to approach the subject with this, not this. And I see so many people that are going down this UFO road more emotionally charged than intellectually curious.